Globally, economists believe that the coronavirus could significantly reduce global economic growth, especially if it becomes a pandemic. Here in Nigeria, the health, customs and immigration institutions are working to minimize the spread of the virus. But can a value be placed on the potential cost and impact of the virus in Nigeria? Babajide Gusonwo is the man with the answers tonight. He joins us on the news at 10 to update on the global state of the coronavirus and insight on the potential cost to Nigeria. I'm sure you're talking more than Naira and Kobo here.
Oh, certainly we should be looking at this because there are three questions that I would like us to talk about tonight. The first is what is on the lips of every African, and that is, if you're living in Africa, what is the probability that you will be infected with the coronavirus probability? The second is, what more should the government be doing? And finally, we need to look at what people are concerned about. What sector is, which if there's one sector, what sector is the most impacted by, or potentially could be impacted by the happenings of the coronavirus? Let's start with the probability of being infected if you were living in Africa today. And that's some good news. We have 3 cases in Africa out of 1.2 billion people.
3 confirmed cases.
3 confirmed cases. So that's a 0.0000003%. In other words, you're more likely to be struck by lightning if you're living in Africa than being infected with the coronavirus. You are more likely to win the lottery than being infected by the coronavirus. You're more likely to become a billionaire in Nigeria than to be infected with the coronavirus, if everything still stays the same. Does that mean the coronavirus is not risky? Yes, it is still risky. There's still no cure. The WHO advises that if you find anybody that is sneezing, coughing suspiciously, keep a distance. Always make sure you wash your hands properly. And of course, if you can afford it, go for vaccination, respiratory illness vaccination.
And I'm sure everyone is willing to or eager to know how this affects the economy.
Oh, yes, from the airports, but perhaps we should, before talking about the economy, let's look at what more the government should be doing by prioritizing the airports that most travelers come in from. We know we have that evidence that shows that every day, 5,000 people coming through the international airports. But out of the 5,000 passengers, that comes into Nigeria every day, 90% of these passengers come through Lagos and Abuja airports. It's only 6% of passengers coming through Kano, 2% Port Harcourt, 1% Enugu, and every other airport less than 1%. So here's what the government should do. Prioritize screening, especially in Lagos, Abuja, and Kano airports. And speaking of the economy, yes, we've seen the new GDP figures from the National Bureau of Statistics. But here are the top 7 sectors that potentially could be impacted by the coronavirus. The first sector, crop production. From the evidence we have today, we know that crop production takes 23% of the size of the economy. A lot of, for large-scale farmers, farm equipment, farm machinery, and spares comes from Asia, so that sector could be impacted. Trade, if private spending declines, we could see that impacting the sector. Crude accounts for 9% of the economy. If global prices decline, it will affect the projections of the government for income from oil. Financial institutions account for 3% of the size of the economy, which potentially we could see an impact of foreign direct investment and foreign portfolio investment. And of course, the air transport sector, even though it accounts for only 0.1% of the economy, the evidence we have today is the air transportation sector is Nigeria's fastest growing sector, growing at an annual rate of 12%. No other sector in Nigeria is currently growing faster than the air transportation sector. So these are the top 7 sectors that could be impacted by the coronavirus.
Well, as usual, Babajide, you give us a lot to think about, a lot to chew on for those listening. Thanks again.
But in the final words, let's remember the words of the former Prime Minister of Barbados, Owen Arthur, who says, "He who has hope has everything. And he who has everything is hopeful." So yes, if you have health, we are hopeful.
We are hopeful. Thanks again, Babajide. Appreciate you all being here tonight.
Pleasure is all mine.